Okay, so we are going to have a quick look at solving equations where we have an x on both sides. And before we get into it, I would want us to have a think about what our algebra actually means. So you end up with x plus something equals something plus x, And what we've got to realise is, for example, if I'm told this amount of stuff is equal to this amount of stuff, okay? Those two things are equal. What's on this side that makes it equal to this side? So we have two lots of x and three little black circles, and we are going to use those just to mean 1 in this problem. So we've got 2x plus 3, and then we have 1x, so remember we can just write the x, plus 5. So this is a situation where we've been told these two things are equal. If you went to the supermarket and this was money, it would be the exact same amount you were spending. But unlike previously, we now have an x on this side and we have an x on this side. And that makes it a little bit more confusing because we want our answer to just have x's on one side. Remember, we like all our answers to be x equals when we've solved that equation. So we're going to have to work out how can we end up with x on just one side. And there's a magic rule here. We are allowed to do to the x's the exact same things we're allowed to do to the numbers. So normally you can undo a number and cancel it out on one side. We are going to do the same thing, and we're going to cancel out this x here. So we've got x plus 5, but we don't want that x, so we're going to take away that x. But we have to be careful because we know equations are equal and they have to be balanced. So you have to take the x away from both sides of that equation. We have 2x, take away x. If you've got 2 of something, take away 1 of something. That will give you just x. And then we've got 3 plus 3. Now, that's not being affected. We've only taken away an x. We're not taking anything away from the 3. So 3 just stays. Then we had an x. We took away an x. So that's 0. And then we have our 5 at the end. Okay, so what we now have is x plus 3 equals 5. And what did this actually do to up here? Well, we took away an x from both sides. That makes sense. You want to find out what x is equal to. There's no point having duplicates on both sides. So now we've got to get rid of those black dots that are duplicates. And we've got to ask ourselves how many we can take away from this side and how many can we take away from this side. So we can take away 1, 2, 3 from both sides. And that makes sense. This is our balancing. We can take away 3 and we can take away 3. So once we've done that, we will have x all by itself, plus 3 take away 3, that cancels, equals 5 take away 3, 2. And that is our final answer. So solving equations on both sides, it can happen because in the real world, when we're talking about these problems, they could be our pound coins, they could be our 10p's. Sometimes you're going to have both things on both sides, but what's important is you just add and subtract and you deal with it the exact same way. Now we're going to go through another example, and in the next example we are not going to look at the picture as we do it, we're just going to go straight for the maths. So let's do 3x take away 2 equals x plus 4. I have no idea how this is going to work out. We may end up with a horrible number at the end, but that can happen, so we may as well practice it happening. Step 1. get rid of the smaller number of x's. So on this side, I have 3x, and on this side, I have 1x. So we're going to take away the smaller number of x's from both sides. And we are going to be left with 3x take away 1x, so 2x's. Take away 2, because we haven't touched that, we absolutely have to leave that number alone. X take away x, so that's 0 plus 4. And now, magically, we have an equation near identical to those we were solving last week. I've got to think, what can we get rid of? Well, reverse BODMAS. So we are getting rid of the adding, subtracting first. So we're going to have to add on. To get from -2 to 0, we have to go up 2, we have to add 2. And we have to do that to both sides. Doesn't affect the 2x. We're just looking at that number. 4 plus 2 gives us 6. And then how do we get rid of that 2 in front of the x? Well, this is a little step we didn't have to do last time. Sometimes you will still end up with a multiple of x right at the end. And all you have to do is divide by the number in front. 6 divided by 2 gives you 3. Okay? So quite crucially, the extra little step, and normally we have the extra little step, it's at the end of the problem. The extra little step here is at the start. And the first thing we want to do is get it so the smaller number of x's is gone. And all that's doing is cancelling out. And here we got rid of the smallest number of x's. And then we're able to solve the problem as usual.